And so going back, I kind of want to like go through this a little slowly. You were referring to like in 2012, seeing that culture was hollow. Could you speak a little bit more about what that meant? I'm curious about, like the conditions that sort of set off this journey for you, this cascade.
Well, it all started with, again, that original spirit dimension shining out, right? And that's the part of us that sees the fundamental levels of reality that the ego or the acquired persona will oftentimes filter. So when that original spirit started shining forth, it was penetrating through my ego. So I could start to see into what I would describe as a more accurate representation of what was actually happening in the physical reality. And a lot of it started with just watching news. Like I would just see the news and immediately like my heart was like, they're lying, they're lying, they're lying. And then I would look at my parents watching the news and I'm like, oh my God, they're like wrapped up in a whole bunch of nonsense that's taking their life force away. That was probably the biggest one. I like saw this sort of vampiric cycle between what was happening on television and the people watching it. And it like blew my mind. I'm trying to tell my parents this and they were like, what are you, this was all new to them. Like, what are you talking about here? Like, time's not real and the news is propaganda. And what is this? So they were, they were a little confused, and I can understand that because it was like a radical personality shift in like a week, so they were like, what the heck is happening? And I started just having all these different experiences where I would see things happening in the mainstream culture and I would detect either intentional or unintentional manipulations that were taking place, just information that was either distracting people from their destiny, right? Trying to just essentially distract them with entertainment, or it was essentially trying to captivate their attention for certain narratives connected to different organizations and their agendas. So I just started to see it almost as clearly as you can see the color of the grass when you look outside. It was just very, very apparent. And at the time, that was a very startling thing for me because I was like, what does this mean? Is this whole world a lie? And it eventually that settled down. And I was like, well, everyone fundamentally is doing their best. Even people that are doing terrible things, right? They're doing their best. It's just their karma. It's their path. It's the passage they're going on, and they won't be there forever. So at first it was very extreme in terms of how I perceived all of that. But through a lot of the practices, one of the focuses we cultivate is compassion, right? Benevolence, virtue. And when those qualities are more internalized, you can look at these people and the villain narrative starts to dissolve quickly. You're like, even though there might be people buying into that archetype and feeding it consciously or unconsciously, it's not that they're bad people, right? It's like, again, everyone has that original spirit, no matter what level of society you exist in. It's just the mask, the character that gets the dirt on it and confuses people and makes them act either selfishly or in a manipulative way or in a destructive way. It really, in my experience, boils down to a confusion and a misunderstanding of that original self.